Hello and welcome to episode 187 of the Podiatry Business Podcast. Today's podcast is titled How to Manage Costs Without Killing Your Podiatry Clinic's Growth. So most podiatry clinics don't really have a cost problem per se. What they have is they have a visibility and a decision-making problem. So they're not actually sure of where their costs are and what they are, and then they're not really sure what to do or how to decide what to do when they look at these costs. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to try and show you a nice simply monthly rhythm that you can do and a kind of a framework. You can decide what's a waste versus what's an investment. So if you're running your podiatry clinic and you're feeling that you're working very hard or long hours or your diary's full, or maybe what's happening is you have a waiting list but you're not really feeling it or seeing it in your bank account, then really it's a numbers problem is where we need to look at. So quick story, I had a client I've been working with for a while, and they did our P&L for the month, this is in April, for the month of March, and they for some reason didn't make as much money as they had in the months before and so on, even though they were probably as busy. So they had a busy clinic, they were full, they couldn't really fit anyone else in, but they just felt that their profits were kind of stuck, that we weren't making the progress that we want. So what I did is I said to them, listen, go and do your P&L, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second, and actually go down and drill down into the costs and then make your decision, your cost-based decision on what is a good cost you have, what is bad cost, what's happened, where's the money gone, what have you done with it. So what I want to do here in this podcast is I want to talk to you about how you can do something similar so you can maximize your cost, because in the clinic you've basically got two ways of making more profit, and that is to either A, make more money, so bring in more cash by having more hours, billable hours, so appointments, putting the price up, etc. I've dealt with that before. And then the second thing is having your costs lower. Now you can only bring your costs down to so much. If you bring your costs down to zero, well, you're not really running a business. It's completely unreasonable because you can't pay your rent, etc., your staffing costs. So we want to make sure, we want to be realistic and realize that we can't bring our costs down below a certain point, and in a lot of cases cutting too much is actually going to be detrimental to your business, whereas your turnover has an infinite size that you can make it. So what we're going to deal with today is costs and how you know what you should cut and what you should actually spend more money on, and so on. So first thing is you must have, what's non-negotiable really, is that you do a monthly profit and loss or management accounts or whatever you want to call it. And what I mean in plain English is that basically you're going to be doing a monthly scorecard of your profit versus your costs. Now this is not the type of P&L that your accountant would do or the management accounts that your accountant would do. It's the same general concept, but we're going to do it in a way that's far more useful to you to use on a day-to-day basis for running your business versus the accountancy. Your accountant has a different job. Your accountant's job is to basically make sure that you spend or pay as little tax as possible, essentially, without going bust. A lot of mistake that people make is they use their accountant as a business coach, and that's not their job. Their job is to be an accountant, which is to make sure that you pay your taxes. You don't pay any more taxes than you need to pay, and that you pay them on time and so on, and don't get in trouble with the government for not doing so. So what we want is we want to be doing a scorecard, or P&L I call it, monthly. Now why monthly? Because if you don't know what's going on in your business, if you can't see the numbers, then you can't manage them. And if you leave this and it's only done every 90 days, then that small leak will become a much bigger leak over a longer period of time. So you need to be doing it monthly, and it shouldn't be something that necessarily going to take you a week to do. You should be able to do this probably within an hour, maybe 90 minutes once a month. And you're probably thinking, well, I'm already so busy, I'm running around, I'm treating patients and so on. This is the most important thing that you do in your business, because otherwise what will happen is you'll end up in the same situation, which I personally was in for a long time. I would go and see my accountant once a year. He'd say, this is how much money you made, and I couldn't understand why I made so little money, and here is your tax bill, which was much higher than I wanted it to be because I wasn't making enough money. So you need to be doing this on a consistent basis so that you're getting ahead of it and you're not allowing things to spiral so that small leak doesn't become a big leak over 90 days or a massive leak over a year if you're only doing it yearly. So how do we do this? I'm actually going to share a screen now and I'm going to draw this out and show you what you want to do. So what we want to look at is at the start of it, first week in every month is for the month before. We want to do this out, and ideally you should do this on an Excel spreadsheet. You can get software to do it and so on, but you just don't need. You can even do it on a simple foolscap, as long as you know what's happening in your business. And this is only for you. It's not to share with your accountant or anyone else in work or anything like that. It's for you to, and what I have my clients do is they do this monthly and they bring this to me, and then I help them to make decisions on what's going on in the business, and we manage to sort their business and get things solved. Okay, so I'm going to just share screen and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So what we want to have at the top is we want to have our revenue or our turnover. So that's going to be, for example, we might say we made 10,000 last month. Then what we want to have on our next section is we want to have wages. But we want to have our wages built or split up. So I prefer to do admin first, so whatever that's going to be. And then I have my clinical team, not including me, here as well. Then the third thing that I have is I have the owner. So let's say, for example, it's me, it's my clinic because I still own a clinic. I will put in here what it costs to pay someone, it would cost to pay someone to do me. So the cost of having someone else do the hours that I currently do, not the wage I pay myself. So for example, I might do 20 hours a week and it might cost me 2,000 euros a month to have someone do those 20 hours. Now I might pay myself 10,000 a month, but that's not what goes in. What goes in here is what the cost would be to replace yourself. And be realistic, okay? If you have a good system, you can probably replace your clinical work with somebody who maybe isn't as experienced as you are. And the reason you do this is what it allows you to do is it allows you to see, well, if I'm working 40 hours a week and it costs me this much, if I cut down to 30, what's it going to cost me to have someone else come in and do those 10 hours? So we're talking wage costs. The next thing we want to have is our expenses costs, which is basically everything else. And we want to have this as categorized as we can. So we're going to have, for example, our rent, our power, our marketing, and we want to split this down. So we don't just write in marketing. So we might say our Google ads spend, or Facebook ad spend, maybe consumables, which are quite high in podiatry clinics. Your orthotics spend and so on. You want to have this as detailed as you can. Now in my own clinic, this section here extends to nearly 50 categories. We have it as detailed as we can, because what I want to be able to do is I want to see a trend. So if, for example, I'm spending 1,000 euros every month on Google and then suddenly that goes to 3,000, well then I'm able to quickly go in and see, well, why did I have a cut of 2,000 in my profit? It's because I allowed my Google to go up for some reason, and then I got to make a decision on whether that's appropriate or not. So you want to have that as detailed as you can. And then what we're going to have down the bottom, just below it, is we're going to have our total expenses. Now this is not what I'm talking about wages, this is total expenses, which is all of this. So this is going to be X, Y, Z, 1,000. Now what we want to do is we want to redo this slightly differently. So we want to have our clinic wage here, or clinician's wage I should say, and we want to also have it in as, so X thousand or whatever it happens to be, but we also want to have it as a percentage of the turnover that month. We want to know both of those. We then want to have an admin version of that. So that might be a certain amount, and then we want to have a percentage. And the reason is because there's right percentages that you should have, your admin team and your clinical team. So if, for example, your clinical team is costing you 20% of your turnover, that's way too high, and that's probably you're overstaffed, and maybe we need to do something about that. And that's either reduce those hours or else increase the turnover. It depends on where you are with your business. And then we have our owner percentage. Again, it's another pound or euro mark depending on where you are, and again a percentage of where that is. Then we want to have our non-wage as a percentage, non-wage expenses, which is remember all of our expenses, so that comes in here, and again that is a percentage. And what all of that allows you to do is you see, well, if I'm spending too much of my turnover in one particular place or not. Then what we have is we have our profit then at the end. So our profit then is whatever happens to be, and then we want to know what that percentage is. And I've dealt with this before. If you have a bigger business, you tend to find that your percentage is lower, but actually it might be a smaller percentage, but it's of a much bigger cake. So again, it all depends on where you are with your business. If you have a small business, if it's just you, maybe you and one other person, that percentage is quite high, but the total value will be less. Now, what I recommend staff do, or clients I should say, what I recommend clients do is they almost will add into that what they're paying themselves, or what the cost was here, because actually they haven't given that, so we put that back in here, and that kind of gives you a truer reflection of what it costs to run your business, what it's costing. So that's not too hard to do. Probably the hardest part is to actually go through all of this section here and to write that out. And really how we do it, how I do it in my clinic, is essentially we just take out my bank account details and I write it all out. Have it done. Now you can delegate this if you want to. You can have someone else do it. You can have a bookkeeper come in and teach them that this is what you want to do. It doesn't really matter how it's done. It's not exactly the way I've done it, but what is important is that you get the numbers, you get the percentages, and you get it as detailed as you can. What's in what order? It's not, it's debatable how you do it. This is the way I like to do it. It makes sense for me. I'm a visual learner, and I think for my clients it works quite well too, because it allows us at a very quick glance to see what's wrong in the business and what do we need to fix. So it's a simple habit, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to do this every single month, and then once you've done it, then you're going to sit down and you're going to review it. Obviously with my clients, they bring it to me and we review it together on one of our coaching calls. So once you've done this, then if things aren't where you want, what you want to be doing is you want to be checking your costs and seeing, you want to be making a judgment on the cost, and is this an expense versus an investment. So sometimes what people do is they will cut costs and they'll end up cutting their nose off to spite their face. So an example would be a client of mine who earlier in the year was running Google Ads, and Google Ads was making their phone ring, but they were a little tight in cash. You know how it is in February, it can be a little tighter, maybe in January. So what they did is they decided they'd cut costs, and they didn't think this through, and they cut their Google Ads costs. And when they cut their Google Ads costs, their phone stopped ringing, so they actually ended up in March with less patients. So we don't want that. We want to think it out, and we want to be making a judgment call on, is this a smart cost? Because remember, we can't have zero costs. So what you want to ask yourself is, does this cost buy me time? Does it buy me patience? Does it buy me profit? Or even, does it buy me peace of mind? Does it help me to reach my goal, whatever that goal is, and it's different for everybody, without costing me sleepless nights? So if you're taking on an extra staff member, and that staff member is allowing you to maybe cut your hours, but it's making you have sleepless nights because you can't really afford the wage, well then maybe that's not the smartest thing to have, and we might have to look at reducing that cost and so on. So there's a few different types of categories that we look at when it comes to costs. So the first category I like to talk about is the growth investments. So is this cost going to produce a return that I can actually then go and measure? So examples of that would be paid ads like Google Ads or Meta Ads, or even SEO. Is my SEO making my Google My Business more interactive? Am I getting more calls? Am I spending money on someone to follow up my leads? And as a result, am I making money from this? So how do you judge that? Well, you want to be able to track it really, okay? So how many calls do I get? So from Google Ads, I've dealt with this before, you can track how many calls you get from the Google Ads spend you have. How many leads am I getting? What's the appointments I'm booked? What's the turn-up rate? And so on. And you also want to consider, well, is there a realistic time horizon? So, if you're running a Facebook ad and after 4 days you go, this isn't working, turn it all off again, that's not really realistic. You've got to give things time to bed in. SEO, for example, can take 6 months, 9 months for you really to start to see a difference. And at that point, it becomes almost like a snowball effect. And you've got to ask yourself, is the system complete? Am I being fair when I judge this cost? So if I'm running ads to make my phone ring and then I don't even answer the phone, is that really the fault of the ad? It's like pouring water into a bucket that has holes in it. So that's investments. So are these costs investments that I can basically check to see is it growing and I can measure the return on it? The second one, so that growth investment. The second one is capability investments, or it's more of an opaque investment, and it's more difficult for you to measure the result of that. Okay, an example of that might be getting business coaching or mentorship with somebody like me. So what I'd like to see obviously with my clients is that every month that they're bringing in more cash and the profits are going up. But it's more difficult to put a number on that versus I made the phone ring with Google this time. Another example might be a staff member goes and comes to you and wants to do and this happened to me in my clinic yesterday, wants to do a dry needling course, and you're going to pay for the course. It's more difficult to judge from a financial perspective the results and returns on that. So how you're going to judge it is a few other things. Is there even a measurable outcome tied to it? If there is, great. If not, you sometimes might have to make your judgment call on whether you feel that this is going to be a good thing for your business. Are you having to implement it, or is it something that's taking a lot of your time up and actually is not really generating any return for you and on your education? And it's more of this is a long-term investment. I know I'm not going to see an immediate return, but I know that this is going to change me, it's going to change my business, and for the long term it makes a much better difference. So for example, with the dry needling course, again, that's what's happening in my clinic. We're sending staff off to do that. They're taking time off work that you're paying them for, and we're paying for the course. But what we know is it will end up with a more fulfilled staff, and we have a better skill set in the clinic for our patients. Now, it's not that we're going to charge the patients any more money, but I know that this is a good cost for us to have in our business. Okay, the next one then is operational necessities. So things that keep the machine running. For example, your rent, your insurance, your clinical supplies, your software. So what you need to do to judge this is you need to see, well, do I absolutely have to have this, or could I live without it? Can I renegotiate those prices? So maybe your clinical supplies or your consumables you haven't looked at in quite a while. Maybe you could downgrade some of the software you've been using. You're paying for more than you need. Is it even being fully used? Maybe you've taken on some sort of software like AI voice, for example, to do dictation of notes, and none of your staff are using it. What we see commonly with clients is that software subscriptions are a really common leak for this. And then the last one I have is convenience, or your vanity costs. So am I running that expensive car through my business that I don't really need? And these are the things that are usually the first to cut. So examples might be nice to have subscriptions, but I don't really need it. That fancy piece of equipment that I bought because I like having it, but nobody really needs it or uses it. And I have spoken to clients who have, and clinics who have multiple ultrasounds, multiple of the same machine that nobody's really using. And maybe it's time to get rid of that. Or even do branding projects with no plan on how to convert. So how do you judge it? Well, basically this comes down to, if I remove this tomorrow, would patients notice? Would I get a worse outcome in the treatment plans I provide my patients? And would my profits drop? And in a lot of cases, this is the kind of thing, this is the kind of the low-hanging fruit in your business that when we become complacent with our business and with our costs, when we go in and we have a hard look at our P&L for the first time, we see that we're spending money and on stuff that we just don't really need. So what you want to think about then is, when you've gone through this, is what is the benefit versus the expense. So you want to test this, okay? So you want to have a simple way you can do this. So the kind of questions I'd like you to consider are, one, what is this cost supposed to produce? Is it supposed to produce more leads? Is it supposed to save me time? Is it supposed to give me better retention? Is it supposed to reduce my stress because I don't have to treat patients? Wages. How am I going to measure that? Okay, and ideally you want to be measuring it with numbers, not just your gut, not vibes. Okay, and over what period of time am I going to judge it? So am I going to judge it over 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and so on? If I'm running Google Ads for the first time, for clients, we tend to say, look, you got to give it 60 days, sometimes up to 90 days for us to make a judgment that this is working. So we might run multiple campaigns, and after 60 days decide which ones are working, which is a good cost, which is a bad cost, and act accordingly. And then we have to kind of suggest what has to be true for this to work. So if I have this cost, am I maximizing the outcome from it? Am I following up with the leads that I actually generate? Am I tracking it? Do I have enough capacity for this staff member I've taken on? And so on and so forth. And finally, if it's not working, what am I going to do? Are we going to fix it? Are we going to replace it? Are we going to cut it? Cutting it is not always the first thing. We have to have our judgment call. Is this a good investment? Is the benefits of it outweighing the costs? And if I remove it, am I going to have more of a detrimental impact on my business? So let me give you some examples. I'm going to give you 2 examples. So the first example, and I have done both of these. First example is Google Ads. Now the benefit of Google Ads is it gives you predictable new patient inquiries that you can then convert. It's so simple to measure. It can all be done automated. So essentially you have got your ad spend plus whoever's managing it. Maybe you got a little bit of software, and maybe you got to have someone answer the call. And what you can do then is you can have a look and you can track and see, well, actually, is this turning into making the phone ring, etc. Now, the common mistake that I see people make when it comes to Google is they're judging their ads by clicks rather than book to patients. So you should always judge it by how many patients did I book in, and is the problem that I'm actually not answering the phone or following up with these leads, or is it that the ad isn't working and I need to turn it off? So the rule is, if you're tracking it and if your follow-up is done properly, then you can then be clear on what is the ROI is it. So Google Ads is pretty simple. You can see very clearly the cost versus the benefit. The second one is a little bit more opaque, and that is business coaching. So I am a business coach, but when I first went and got my business coach, to be honest, I didn't have a whole lot of money, and it was stressful for me, the idea of doing it. But I knew I had to make a change. And the benefit for me was that it allowed me to have somebody with the experience to make better decisions. I started making far fewer mistakes, or I avoided mistakes if I'm honest, and I grew a lot faster because I had somebody who had done it before and allowed me to avoid those mistakes. So what you want to look at is, what is your monthly fee plus time, and is it actually generating more income? So if, for example, you're spending 100 quid a month on some sort of mentorship program, or your members some business coaching, whatever it happens to be, but it's not actually making any difference to your business, well then that's probably not a very good use of 100 quid. If on the other scale you're spending 1,000 quid a month on coaching, but it actually is leading to you doubling your business, then that's a good cost. Even though that cost is higher, it's 10 times higher than the first one, it's a good cost, and you can justify the cost of what you're doing. Remember, with coaching, it only pays if you implement it. if you don't implement it, it's not going to work. Same, you can say, very similar when it comes to doing, say, CPD courses and so on, going on those courses. So to close, what we want to do is if we're looking at our business and we're thinking that our business is not making the money we want it to do, what we should not automatically assume is that all costs are bad. Certainly, you've probably got some costs that are unnecessary, but in a lot of cases, what we have to do is look at the costs and see, actually, this is beneficial to my business. I just need to make sure that the outcome of the cost is being optimized in my own clinic. And you're doing this by having a monthly P&L, and you're looking at the costs, and you're doing so every single month. So do a monthly P&L, pick 1 or 2 costs to optimize every single month, double down on doing that, and what will happen is you'll notice by the end of the year you've transformed your business. Maybe once a quarter, what you want to do is revisit bigger fixed costs and maybe reset your budget. I do this with my Google Ads. So once every quarter I revisit my Google Ads because I've got 90 days of data, and I might increase it, turn it down, and so on. About 3 years ago, I restarted all of my Google Ads and gave myself 12 months to do so. So every quarter I would go back and I would assess the cost and see the benefit, turn off what wasn't working and turn up what was working. And over the course of 12 months, I ended up more than doubling the spend of my Google Ads. So if you want help figuring out this, which costs are actually buying you growth and which ones are draining your profit, then this is the sort of stuff that we help our clients with, we help podiatry clinics with every single day. We'd love to have a chat with you and help you to do the same thing. All you got to do is go to morepracticeprofits.com and book a free triage call. It's just a 10-minute phone call. We'll have a chat on the phone. We'll have a conversation and we'll see where we go. And we can help clinic owners just like you look at your numbers, your patient pipeline, your systems, and to map out a journey to get you from where you are to a business of and a lifestyle that you want. So until next time, start looking at your costs. Start figuring out which are good costs, which are bad costs, and are you actually optimizing the results of the cost that you have. Talk to you next time.